Hey, everybody, and welcome to another deep dive. This time, we're tackling Boxing Day.
Yeah, you guys sent in some really interesting stuff for this one.
Right. An academic paper excerpt.
Exactly.
Looks like you really want to get beyond, the typical Boxing Day stuff.
The shopping and leftovers.
Yeah. Which is a great idea, because this holiday is way more complicated than it might seem.
Oh, absolutely. It's fascinating. This excerpt really challenges that sort of warm and fuzzy image of Boxing Day.
Okay, so where do we even begin?
Well, I think we need to go back in time, way back.
Okay. How far back are we talking?
17th century Britain.
Wow.
Yeah. A time of some serious social and economic upheaval.
Okay, yeah, help me understand that. Paint me a picture of 17th century Britain.
So imagine a society where the old feudal system's kind of crumbling, right?
Right.
And then capitalism is sort of emerging, it's gaining traction. And at the same time, you have this thing called the enclosure movement. Basically, people are being forced off the land they used to share. They had to go to the cities to find work.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a big shift. So you end up with this huge population of people who really need work. I mean, they're desperate. And they're totally dependent on, the wealthy for survival.
So it's this dependence on the wealthy that leads to, the whole Christmas box thing.
You got it. We always hear about those, wealthy families, right? Giving boxes of food and money, maybe even some small gifts to their servants. The people who worked for them, or maybe the local tradespeople.
Right. The day after Christmas.
Exactly. It's easy to just see that as holiday generosity, right? But according to this excerpt, it's a lot more complicated than that.
Okay, yeah, now you've got me really interested. What's the real story then?
Well, it wasn't just about, spreading cheer. This was a very hierarchical society, really stratified.
Mm-hmm.
And giving out these Christmas boxes, it was almost a way for the wealthy to sort of solidify their position. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maintain order.
So these acts of giving were actually about control.
It's kind of like that, yeah. For the wealthy, these boxes, it was a way of showing off, look at how generous we are.
Why?
Reinforcing their spot at the top.
At the top of the pyramid, yeah.
And for the people getting these boxes, I mean, for a lot of them, this was the only time they got anything extra all year.
Whoa.
It was the only recognition for their hard work.
So it's almost like it's less of a celebration and more of a reminder of where you stand.
Yeah, subtle reminder of your place.
Okay, this is getting intense. I like it.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. And it makes you wonder, what was it like, for the people receiving those boxes? How did they really feel about it?
That's a good question. I mean, I'd love to get their perspective on this whole tradition. Was it just simple gratitude, or was there something more going on there?
It's a great question. I wish we had more, more information about that.
Yeah.
But this particular excerpt, it doesn't really go into the recipient's feelings,
Right.
But I'm sure it must have been complicated, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Some relief, maybe getting some extra food or whatever, but also
Resentment.
yeah, maybe some resentment at the whole power dynamic.
Yeah, for sure. Which makes me wonder if were there any examples of I don't know, maybe resistance to this, or alternative ways of thinking about Boxing Day.
Yeah.
Something that pushed back against that whole top-down charity thing.
That's really interesting. It would be fascinating to see how people actually reacted.
Mm.
But this excerpt doesn't really give us any specific examples, unfortunately. But I mean, it makes sense, right? Whenever you have these power dynamics, there's always going to be people who challenge that.
Right.
Who push back.
Yeah, so sometimes what's not in the source is just as interesting as what IIS in there.
Absolutely. And that actually brings us to a really interesting parallel. In the modern world, think about philanthropy today. Billionaires giving away huge sums of money, influencing policy,
Mm-hmm.
even shaping how we think about social issues.
Wait, are you saying that modern philanthropy is basically just
A new version of the Christmas box?
yeah, a way for the wealthy to exert their influence and just kind of keep things as they are? But I mean, come on, there has to be some philanthropy that's genuinely altruistic.
Of course, there are tons of examples of that.
Mhm.
But I think it's important to acknowledge that even when the intentions are good, even then, philanthropy can be used to push certain agendas.
Oh, interesting.
Or to shape public opinion. And sometimes it can even benefit the giver financially, even when they're supposedly trying to solve a problem.
Okay, that's a really good point. So how do we tell the difference
Yeah.
between genuine giving and this more calculated kind?
That's a tough one. But I think a good place to start is, just ask yourself, who's benefiting from this? Is it really helping the people it's supposed to help, or is it mainly helping the person who's giving?
I see. We need to look beyond the surface. Think about the motivations and the power dynamics, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it reminds me of something we talked about earlier. That fear of revolt that we were talking about back in the day with those Christmas boxes. It's like that same fear, that need to maintain control, prevent any kind of uprising. It's still a factor today with philanthropy.
Oh, totally.
Think about it. By giving money to address like the symptoms of inequality, right? The wealthy can maybe avoid making bigger, more systemic changes that might threaten their power.
Like putting a Band-Aid on a much bigger problem.
Exactly. And that's why this whole dive into Boxing Day is so relevant. We're not just talking about some old tradition. We're talking about the connection between power and charity.
Yeah.
And how, that dynamic still affects us today in ways that we might not even realize.
Yeah, that's what's really hit me, how these patterns, like, they're still playing out today, just in different ways. It makes me think, like, what are some, I don't know, specific examples of these, like, modern day Christmas boxes?
Mm-hmm. Well, you see it a lot with corporations, like how they use charitable giving to, boost their image.
Oh, yeah.
Or distract from maybe some not so great business practices.
Wow.
Like a company that has a terrible environmental record, right?
Yeah, right.
And then they make this huge donation to some big environmental cause.
So it's almost like they're trying to buy forgiveness.
Like a PR move.
Yeah, creating this narrative that they're like a good corporate citizen when, behind the scenes, they might be doing things that actually harm the environment.
Exactly. It's a way to control the public perception and maybe, avoid any stricter regulations or bad press.
That's fascinating. It really makes you wonder, how much of what we see as generosity is actually like motivated by self-interest.
Right. It's a good question to ask.
Yeah.
And it goes beyond corporations too. Think about politics, like a candidate who makes a big deal about donating to a local charity.
Mm-hmm.
It makes them look compassionate, right? Like they really care about the community.
Right.
But it could also be a totally calculated move to win votes or to distract from maybe some more controversial policies.
So it's like those votes are the new Christmas box.
Kind of, yeah. The politician gets what they want, which is power, and the people who got the donation, well, they get, a short-term benefit. But the power structure, it stays the same.
It's wild how these parallels like just keep popping up. It makes me think we really need to be careful about like taking things at face value, especially when it comes to charity and philanthropy.
Yeah, I think it's important to be, critical, like really think about the information we're getting, ask the tough questions.
Yeah. Who's really benefiting from this? What are the motivations? Are there power dynamics at play that we're not seeing?
Exactly. And I don't think it's about being, cynical or anything.
Right.
It's not about dismissing genuine acts of kindness. It's just about being more aware, more discerning, I guess.
I like that.
Yeah. Just remembering that power and charity, they've always been connected. And understanding that connection is really important if we want to create a more just world.
Well said.
Yeah.
So you wanted a deep dive on Boxing Day? I think we delivered.
I think so.
We've gone way beyond just,
Sure.
shopping and leftovers.
We've unpacked some pretty heavy stuff.
We talked about those power dynamics behind the Christmas box and what might have been going on with the motivations for all that giving.
Yeah.
And that fear of revolt that seemed to be driving a lot of it.
Mm-hmm. And how those same dynamics are still at work today.
Exactly. Just in new and there's sometimes sneaky ways we've challenged that whole simple story of, generous, wealthy people and grateful, poor people. We've uncovered some maybe some uncomfortable truths about how power and charity can be used to keep things the way they are.
Right. But we've also talked about how important it is to, question those narratives.
Yeah.
To really look for those deeper motivations and those power dynamics that are always there lurking beneath the surface.
Absolutely. And remember, even in systems that are designed to like maintain control, there's always room for pushing back.
Always.
For telling a different story.
And challenging the status quo.
So the next time you see, those big Boxing Day sales or you hear about some billionaire making a giant donation, take a second. Think about what might really be going on.
Ask those questions.
Who benefits? What are the power dynamics? Those are the kind of deep dive questions that can help us understand the world better and maybe even make it a little more fair. Thanks for joining us. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those deep dive requests coming.